Laura was the name my husband Ethan used to say so tenderly each morning. It was the name he breathed into my ear during long nights as if I were his entire universe. Yet tonight I heard my name spoken differently, not from his lips, but from a secret conversation in a cold, unfamiliar tone. I awoke in the middle of the night, the bed beside me icy and empty. At first, I assumed he might be in the bathroom or downstairs fetching a drink, but as I was about to turn over and return to sleep, a faint whisper reached my ears, soft but distinct in the silence of night. I sat upright, my heart racing. It was Ethan's voice, careful and restrained, yet what froze me was the following sentence. She still doesn't suspect anything. My breath caught, as though an unseen hand gripped my heart. That sensation, the one I had ignored whenever I caught Ethan hurriedly locking his phone screen as I entered or dodging my questions about work, flooded back all at once, crashing over me like a tidal wave. I silently slipped from bed, bare feet brushing the cold wooden floor. I trailed the whispers to the door of his home office, where a thin line of light shone through the crack. I crept closer, pressing myself to the wall, straining to hear more clearly. Yes, I've already transferred it, going as planned. Almost done. My throat tightened. Transferred what? Going as planned? My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Then footsteps approached. Feeling panicked, I hurried back to bed and pulled the blanket over myself. Moments later, the bedroom door opened quietly. Ethan entered as if nothing had occurred. I closed my eyes, focused on my breathing, and acted like I had not heard anything. The mattress shifted beside me as he settled down. After some time, I sensed his calm, steady breathing, like everything was normal, but I understood that beneath this composed exterior, he was concealing something, and it involved me. The following morning, while Ethan was still asleep, I took my phone and quietly slipped into the kitchen. I had never really paid close attention to our finances because Ethan managed the bills, investments, and savings. But today, I opened the banking app and scanned the recent transactions. The numbers stared back at me. $500, $1,000, $200, $750, $2,000. All of these withdrawals happened over the past 3 months. They were not large amounts individually, but enough to make me realize something was amiss. I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to steady my breathing. These were not payments for bills or investments. The money was simply disappearing. A voice behind me made me jump. Ethan stood there leaning against the doorway, rubbing his neck as if he had just woken up. He smiled, but as soon as his eyes landed on my phone, a flash of tension crossed his face. Just randomly checking, I replied, keeping my tone calm. There are some withdrawals I do not recognize. Ethan walked over and poured himself a cup of coffee. Ethan took a sip of his coffee before replying casually, "Oh, those are just some minor investments I forgot to mention." I stared at him, searching for any sign or small clue that he might be lying, but Ethan had always been a skilled actor. I nodded without asking further questions, yet a new feeling rose inside me. Not doubt this time, but a chilling certainty. That evening, I watched Ethan more carefully. He was constantly texting, always placing his phone face down. He stepped outside to take calls, whispering as if not wanting to be overheard. Then my opportunity came. Ethan got up, saying he was going to take a shower, and he did something he had never done before. He left his phone on the table. I waited a few seconds, controlling my breathing before picking it up. The screen lit up with a new message. The sender was Ian Morris. The message read, "Just make sure she stays in the dark. Almost done." My hand clenched the phone tightly, and my heart almost stopped. Who was Ian Morris, and what did almost done mean? My whole body turned icy as I put the phone back on the table. The sound of running water filled the bathroom, but my mind was consumed by one thought. Ethan was not simply hiding something, he was plotting against me. Returning the phone, my heart raced as if I had stolen a dangerous secret. Those words haunt me. Just make sure she stays in the dark. Almost done. I no longer had any doubts. Ethan was not just keeping secrets, he was actively scheming. To trick me, whatever it was nearly complete. I stood up, took a deep breath, and quietly exited the living room. The water was still running, which meant I had at least several more minutes before Ethan returned. I needed to act immediately. The following morning, Ethan acted as though nothing unusual had happened. He smiled gently as he placed a cup of coffee before me and asked about my job. his concern seeming insincere. I returned a faint smile, doing my best not to reveal that I already knew the truth. Laura, I believe we should rearrange our finances a bit, Ethan said, putting his phone face down on the table as he always did. It's just a precaution. You never know what life might throw at us. I stared at him, my eyes narrowing. What do you mean by rearranging? We should consolidate our assets so that if anything ever happens, managing them becomes simpler, he explained evenly, though each word felt carefully measured. I will handle all the paperwork. You only need to sign. I gripped my coffee cup tightly, struggling to remain calm. I had anticipated this moment. He was trying to manipulate me by making it sound like a straightforward legal matter, but I was not naive. I smiled and nodded slowly. Sounds reasonable. Can you show me the documents first? I saw a brief flash of surprise in Ethan's eyes. Perhaps he had not expected me to agree so readily, yet he did not reveal much emotion. He simply nodded and said, "Of course, I will have them ready shortly." Soon after Ethan left for work, I did not wait a moment longer before calling someone I trusted, Anna, my lawyer and closest friend. Since college, I never allowed Ethan to win. In this situation, I had to defend myself before he acted, just as I told her. Anna listened quietly until I finished speaking. Then she uttered only a single, straightforward sentence. "Laura, you must move your assets right away." I had been dwelling on it all night, but hearing Anna confirm it made me even more determined. She explained, "We will establish a trust. Transfer all valuable possessions to your name within it, so Ethan cannot lay a finger on them." I nodded and agreed instantly. In less than 3 days, we completed everything. The apartment, savings accounts, investment shares, all were secured. Now, no matter how hard Ethan tried, he was unable to take anything from me. 4 days later, Ethan arrived home earlier than usual. He sat opposite me, his expression serious and full of intent. I sensed the moment had arrived. He began placing a stack of papers on the table and said, "Laura, I believe we need a serious conversation." I gazed at the documents before me. I already suspected their contents, and I was prepared. "I want a divorce," Ethan said calmly, as if he had rehearsed the words countless times. I raised an eyebrow, showing no shock. There was a brief hesitation in his eyes, but he quickly recovered his composure. "I think this is for the best. We have grown apart, and I don't want things to become even more strained." I remained silent for a few seconds, then slowly pushed the papers back toward him. "Before we deal with this, there is something you should be aware of." Ethan frowned and asked what was going on. I took a deep breath, looked directly into his eyes, and spoke clearly, word by word. "I have already transferred all my assets." The atmosphere in the room instantly grew tense. Ethan froze, his eyes wide, his jaw tightening. "You cannot take anything from me anymore," I continued calmly but firmly. "Everything is legally secured. The apartment, the savings accounts, the investments, they have all been moved." Ethan remained silent for a long moment. I could see the tension in his face, his hand clenching into a fist. He had not anticipated this. I smiled and slowly stood up. "You were right about one thing, Ethan," I said, my gaze locked on his. "No one can predict what will happen." He did not reply. I knew he was calculating in his mind, but it no longer mattered. The power had shifted, and now I was the one in control. Ethan stayed silent for a full minute, sitting motionless while still gripping the divorce papers he had just handed me. The anger in his eyes was undeniable, yet he tried to suppress it, to appear collected as though he still held command. But I knew the truth. He had nothing left to claim from me. I stood up gently, adjusting the edge of my coat. "If there is nothing else to discuss, I believe we can end this conversation here." Ethan took a deep breath, seemingly searching for some kind of anchor, then forced a smile. However, I caught the calculating expression in his eyes. "We will meet in court, Laura," he warned, his voice low and sharp as a blade, "and you will not escape this easily." I returned his stare with a defiant smirk and said, "Then go ahead and try." Leaving the living room, I was filled with a sense of victory, yet I understood that the true conflict was only beginning. 3 days later, I received a bulky envelope from Ethan's attorney. Inside was a formal divorce petition accompanied by an extensive list of claims. He demanded half of all assets, including the apartment where I currently lived, 50% of all joint financial accounts, and a monthly allowance. He justified this by saying he had given up his career for the sake of our marriage. I laughed aloud upon reading the final sentence. Ethan had never truly sacrificed anything during our years together. I had borne the financial burden alone. He had lost nothing, yet still demanded everything from me. I grabbed my phone and called Ian Morris immediately. "We have a serious problem," I said once she answered. Ian chuckled quietly. "Let me guess. Ethan is refusing to back down, right?" "Of course not," I sighed while flipping through the papers. "He wanted half my assets, the apartment, and even spousal support payments?" Ian scoffed. "He actually believes he stands a chance?" "No," I replied, "but he will do whatever it takes to break me." "Then it is time to show him he chose the wrong adversary," Ian said firmly. 4 days later, Ian and I were sitting at her law office reviewing the full case file. Ian laid out the strategy with confidence and determination. She folded her arms tightly and said, "He stands no chance." "Are you certain?" I raised an eyebrow as Anna nodded in agreement. "You moved all your assets before he filed the papers legally, so he has no rights to any of it, nor to the support he demands. Your earnings were always the main income in the marriage." I exhaled deeply, feeling a wave of relief, but before I could fully relax, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number warning me, "Be cautious, Laura, Ethan does not follow the rules." A shiver ran down my spine. 3 days later, I sensed a change at work. Initially, it was just odd stares from colleagues and whispered conversations as I passed by. I thought it might be in my head until my assistant Rachel entered my office, looking uneasy. "There's something you need to see," she said, placing a printed sheet on my desk. I glanced at it. It was a post on an anonymous forum accusing a CFO of embezzling company funds to conceal money during a divorce. Several comments were mere speculation, but one made my stomach twist. "I know who this is, Laura. I looked at Rachel, fury surging inside me. "Ethan is behind this," I said sharply. Rachel nodded grimly. "If this gets out, it could ruin your reputation." I inhaled deeply, fighting to stay composed. I cannot let Ethan ruin my career. I must speak with Anna immediately. Grabbing my phone, I said, "We cannot let him get away with this." I met Anna that same evening and explained everything to her. She frowned deeply. "He is attempting to discredit you personally," Anna said. "He wants to make you lose your composure and slip up." I replied firmly, "That will not happen." Anna nodded and then added, "We will fight back." I met her gaze, my eyes burning with resolve. "Do you have a plan?" Anna smiled. "First, we send him a formal cease and desist letter. If he spreads another falsehood, we file a lawsuit for defamation and intentional harm to your reputation." A spark ignited within me. Ethan believed he could destroy me with lies, but he was mistaken. I glanced at Anna with a sharp grin and said, "Then let us begin." 3 days later, I was seated in my attorney's office when Anna arrived holding a folder, her eyes sharp and focused. "What is it this time?" I asked, struggling to keep my frustration in check at the seriousness on her face. Anna slid a paper towards me. "Ethan has just filed a lawsuit accusing you of financial fraud." I froze with shock. "What exactly is he alleging?" I queried. "He claims you embezzled funds from your joint accounts before moving your assets," Anna explained calmly but tense. "And it is not only him. There is another person named as a co-plaintiff." I opened the file and my eyes fell upon a familiar name. Ian Morris. A chill ran down my spine. Ethan was not acting alone. He had an accomplice. "Who is Ian Morris?" I asked dryly, folding my arms. Anna responded, "We have investigated him. He is notorious for fabricating financial documents and has been linked to a number of lawsuits, though no one ever had enough proof to charge him." I took a deep breath as I flipped through the files Ethan had submitted to the court. "These figures are not from my transactions," I exclaimed, my voice brimming with anger. Anna gave a knowing nod. "That is exactly what we suspected. Ethan is trying to make it look legitimate, but if we don't act fast, things could get dangerous." I clenched my fists, determined. Ethan would not succeed. I had come too far fighting for myself, and I was not going to let him destroy everything with lies. "Can we prove these documents are fabricated?" I asked. Anna gave a faint yet sharp smile. "Not only can we prove it, but we are going to turn this in our favor." Without delay, Anna handed the case to a forensic financial analyst. 1 week later, She summoned me to her office. "You are going to like this," she said, her eyes shining with an uncommon look of satisfaction. I sat down, heart pounding, as she placed a new file before me. They made a grave error. The transactions Ethan attributes to you carry timestamps from before your financial account was even opened. I blinked in disbelief. "What do you mean?" Anna tapped on a page that showed a list of bank statements. The account was started in July, but in the documents submitted by Ethan and Ian Morris, there are transactions dating back to May. They were overconfident and did not double-check their data. I gazed at the figures before me, and slowly a smile formed. "They have just ruined their own case," I murmured. Anna nodded. "We are going not only to have this charge dismissed, but we will also sue them for defamation and for presenting forged evidence." In the courtroom, I inhaled deeply as a surge of excitement overcame me. Ethan had effectively sealed his own fate. 3 days later, Anna officially filed the counterclaim with the court. Defendant Ethan Reynolds, together with his partner Ian Morris, knowingly presented forged evidence to the court, intending to defame and financially damage the plaintiff, Laura Thompson. Moreover, we also requested compensation for the harm caused. Ethan was not only going to lose, but he was going to pay for every falsehood he had spread. That evening, I sat on the couch savoring a rare moment of calm with a cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. The number was unknown. I answered the call and was met with a menacing voice. "You think you are so clever, do you?" I smiled and said, "Hello, Ethan. I assume you just received the notice from your lawyer?" His tone was filled with fury. "I promise, Laura, you will regret this," he snarled. "You have no idea who you are dealing with." I leaned back confidently and replied without fear, "No, Ethan, you are the one unaware of who you are confronting." I heard heavy breathing followed by silence as the call disconnected. I placed the phone down on the table, a smile still playing on my lips. Ethan could issue all the threats he wanted, but I had uncovered the truth. He was desperate and would not stop until he paid the price for everything he had done. The courtroom atmosphere was thick with tension. I sat straight with my eyes fixed on Ethan standing opposite me. He was impeccably dressed in a custom suit, yet his expression revealed much more. He tried to mask his nervousness by acting confident, but I noticed his hands gripping the edge of the table, his fingers pale from the strain. The judge leafed through the papers before him, his gaze contemplative before he spoke calmly. Based on the evidence presented, the court concludes that the transactions Mr. Ethan Reynolds claims Miss Laura Thompson made before transferring her assets were actually impossible. A brief silence fell over the room. I glanced at Ethan and caught a slight twitch in his eye, his jaw tightening. He knew what was coming. The judge continued. A forensic financial specialist confirmed these transactions were time-stamped before the plaintiff's account was even opened. This clearly shows the documents submitted by Mr. Ethan Reynolds and his associate were fabricated. A ripple of whispers swept through the courtroom. I heard Ian Morris chuckle quietly beside me, and a wave of satisfaction swelled inside me. The judge lightly tapped his gavel. Because the defendant presented forged evidence here in court in an attempt to defame the plaintiff, the court not only rejects all Mr. Reynolds' claims, but also orders him to pay the entire legal expenses of this case. I couldn't contain my smile as Ethan's shoulders collapsed. He had invested everything in this lawsuit, sure he could break me, yet in the end, it was he who was utterly defeated. "Your Honor!" the attorney exclaimed sharply. The judge raised a hand, signaling for silence. Moreover, due to the intentional submission of fraudulent information to the court, I am ordering an inquiry into the authenticity of the documents provided by Mr. Reynolds and his collaborator. At that moment, Ethan froze, completely aware of the gravity of the situation. This was no longer a simple divorce proceeding. If the inquiry validated that he had deliberately forged documents to manipulate the judicial process, he would face much graver consequences. I remained silent, merely observing as the realization gradually appeared in his eyes. Ethan had lost all bargaining power. Not only would he gain nothing from me, but he also risked facing real legal peril. The judge struck the gavel once more, declaring court adjourned. I rose, adjusting my coat. Nearby, Laura showed a triumphant smile, a perfect victory. Ethan stood frozen for a moment before turning and leaving the courtroom. I noticed the rigidity in his posture and the lack of confidence in his steps. I slowed down intentionally, making sure he felt my presence and understood I was still there witnessing his downfall. He glanced back at me. I tilted my head slightly, smiling slowly, and asked, "Are we done here, Ethan?" He said nothing. There was nothing left to say. He had lost everything. I stepped outside the courthouse, inhaling deeply. The air felt fresh, a stark contrast to the heavy tension that had filled the room moments before. I had won not just a legal battle, but a prolonged and exhausting psychological struggle with Ethan. A week later, Ethan's attorney reached out to Anna, attempting to work out a deal to halt the criminal probe. We refused because Ethan had brought this upon himself, and I had no desire to help him escape the consequences. 2 weeks after that, rumors began to circulate. Some of his former coworkers whispered about the case, about how he had tried to deceive the legal system to claim assets during the divorce. His company dismissed him, and the reputation he once held in the finance sector vanished. No one wanted to be connected to someone who attempted to bend the law for selfish reasons. I heard he had to sell his cherished sports car to cover part of his legal expenses. The luxury apartment where he once lived was put up for sale as well. Everything he tried to take from me, he ultimately lost himself. One quiet evening, I sat in my apartment, sipping a glass of wine, when my phone buzzed with a message from Anna. She wrote, "Congratulations, Laura, he has completely fallen apart." I smiled, placed the phone on the table, and gazed out the window. The city was aglow with twinkling lights, and I felt lighter than I had in a long while. I stepped fully into my apartment, welcoming the calm that filled the room. There were no longer manipulative messages or late-night calls from Ethan's low voice threatening me. For the first time in many months, I could breathe deeply without feeling a heavy pressure on my chest. The victory had not come easily, but it was unquestionably mine. It arrived in the most significant way possible. I kept everything that belonged to me, while Ethan lost everything. A message from Anna lit up my phone this evening. "We celebrate without exception." I laughed and swiftly replied simply, "Of course, 3." Hours later, I entered an upscale restaurant where Anna had booked a large table. My close friends were already gathered talking and holding glasses of wine. As I came in, applause erupted and Anna rose, raising her glass towards me. "This is for Laura, one who showed us all an important lesson: never underestimate a clever woman with a plan." I chuckled and tapped my glass against hers. The wine felt smooth and rich with the flavor of triumph. Beatrice tilted her head, her eyes shining. "How does it feel?" "Knowing he is left with nothing." I placed my glass down and smiled honestly. "It is relieving, but more than that." Beatrice nodded, her face full of understanding. "You made it through. So what comes next?" I took a deep breath, absorbing the vibe, the soft rhythm of the city beating just outside the window. Nothing was holding me back anymore. No one else was in control of my life. "Enjoy it," I said with a gentle smile, "and never let anyone have that kind of power over me again." Everyone lifted their glasses in agreement, cheering. I looked around the table at my friends who had stood by me from the start, who had witnessed me hit the lowest point and then rise stronger than ever. After the celebration, I walked alone along the street, walking along the avenue, my heels softly tapping against the stone pavement. Chicago at night revealed a unique charm. The golden lights shining from towering buildings mirrored on the wet streets, creating a magical, almost surreal glow. A cool October breeze brushed against me, carrying with it a freshness that caressed my skin gently. I wrapped my coat snugly around myself, not due to the cold, but to cherish this moment of pure freedom. Suddenly, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number saying, "This is not over." I looked at the screen and smiled knowingly. I did not have to think twice to recognize the sender. Calmly, I blocked the number, taking full command of my life at last. No longer would Ethan or the shadows of my past follow me. Standing on my balcony, I watched the sparkling cityscape stretching endlessly to the horizon. The air tonight felt lighter, almost as if a heavy burden that had long weighed on my shoulders had been lifted. My chapter with Ethan was closed, and this victory extended far beyond legal battles or financial gains. I had reclaimed myself. Some lessons in life come harshly. I used to believe Ethan was trustworthy and that we could build a future together. I ignored all warning signs, convinced that love and trust could overcome anything. How wrong I was. Not everyone is as they seem, and even those we love deeply can betray us in unimaginable ways. True strength does not lie in avoiding betrayal because no matter how careful, how loving, or how giving you are, some people will inevitably disappoint. You can still take advantage of someone's trust, but what truly counts is how you respond afterward. Do you let it break you, or do you emerge stronger and wiser? I chose the latter. What I experienced was not merely a legal fight with Ethan, it became an intense lesson in protecting myself, both financially and emotionally. I once believed love meant complete openness with no secrets or protections, but life showed me otherwise. Guarding yourself does not imply a lack of trust. Instead, it means recognizing that trust must be paired with preparation, especially when relationships involve money. Having a clear strategy does not diminish love. It ensures that regardless of the outcome, you remain resilient. Ethan assumed I would be an easy target to manipulate. He schemed, tried to pressure me, expecting me to collapse. However, he was mistaken. I kept my composure, devised a plan, and acted decisively at the perfect time. There is a unique strength in controlling your emotions and refusing to let others shape your destiny. Ethan's arrogance and rashness revealed weaknesses, and I seized those vulnerabilities to defeat him. I took a sip of wine, savoring its faint bitterness as a reminder of the past left behind. Ahead of me lay a future I controlled. It might have taken some time to reach this point, but from now on, I vowed never to let anyone dominate my life again. I refused to be in a situation where someone else held the power to determine my fate. I had finally learned the lesson of self-empowerment. To protect myself, I had taken back the life I was always meant to have and vowed never to let it slip away again. Life is not always just, and occasionally those we trust the most turn out to be the ones who deceive us. Laura's story goes beyond a simple divorce case or lawsuit. It teaches valuable lessons about trust, preparation, and self-protection in every kind of relationship, especially when money is involved. Never lose control over your life when confronted with betrayal. Remain composed, devise a strategy, and act at the right moment because sometimes the greatest triumph is not revenge, but reclaiming your true self. Laura's journey serves as a powerful reminder that no one should ever surrender control over their own destiny. What is your opinion on how she dealt with the deception? Share your thoughts below and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring real-life stories about life and family.